Now, that are some of the pros and cons that one should look at when you opt for a direct scheme or a regular scheme. If you have the wherewithal to pick the funds, see, or you just outsource it to someone who is dependable, who can sort of take care of these things and can just do it for you. So then comes the dividend versus the growth model, right? Should you opt for a dividend paying mutual fund or should you opt for a growth mutual fund? Now, what happens is dividend, if you see, is tax inefficient, right? So today, if you receive dividends from a company, earlier what used to happen was when a company would declare dividends, they had to pay DDT at the source, which was called a dividend distribution tax. Now, once they started doing that, let's say they were paying a dividend distribution tax. Excuse me. Yeah, sorry. So if the company paid the dividend distribution tax, it didn't. I mean, it was tax free in your hands, right? But now, with the changes in tax laws and the changes in budget, today dividend is taxable in your hands at the highest slab rate, right? So that then becomes a challenge. That's number one. Second is, if you look at a dividend mutual fund, what ends up happening is, let's say you park 100 rupees in a mutual fund, right? And let's say at the fund level, the fund is getting dividends. It's probably reinvesting those dividends back into the stocks. But what ends up happening is, in a dividend paying mutual fund, it's basically your money with them being sent back to you, right? And this is something which, for the longest time, if you see in our stock discussions also, we've discussed this multiple times and we've discussed this in vivid detail, is the fact that for a company that generates money or has reserves, what the first choice that the company should look at is to look at what the reinvestment is, or where is the money being reinvested. After that, you follow it, let's say, with a buyback, right? So let's say if the company realizes that there are not enough reinvestment opportunities, so you might look at doing a buyback. If, let's say, you are not happy by doing a buyback, you're like, okay, instead of a buyback, let me pay a dividend, right? So that should be the pecking order: reinvestment, buyback, and dividend. So dividend typically is the last when it comes to the whole pecking order of the choice of returning capital or capital allocation. So then you can ask me, or this question might come to your head that, hey, but I want something that pays regular cash flows. Then at that point of time, you should look at something called a withdrawal rate, as to at what rate should you continue withdrawing. Maybe you park. Excuse me. I don't know why I'm yawning so much, but I'm sorry about that. But what ends up happening is, let's say you park probably 100 or 1000 rupees in, let's say, a mutual fund, or you do a mix of a fixed deposit or a mutual fund, or you do something which is called a systematic withdrawal plan. Let's say at the end of every year, a certain portion of your mutual fund comes to a liquid fund, and then from the liquid fund you can do a SWP again to your savings account, right? This will in effect take care of your cash flows, right? So that's on the dividend model. Now, when you look at mutual funds, you will see there's an option called IDCW, which is a distribution withdrawal, and there's some full form that basically stands for the fact that dividend is being paid out on regular intervals. That's the whole model, right? Now, when you look at growth as an option, I feel growth is a more tax efficient form of compounding, because what ends up happening is, your mutual fund basically is reinvesting dividends for you without you having to pay tax, right? And then that gets compounded at the fund level. Now, let's say when the mutual fund is buying and selling stocks, they don't have to pay short-term capital gains tax, which again adds another layer of efficiency to the way mutual funds operate, and there's a big tax arbitrage that they have over, let's say, individual investors. So that way, there's some, even if let's say the fund ends up underperforming, some of these slippages or some of these arbitrage positives that are there for the mutual fund, that helps them sail through tough times, right?